It's a story of a small boy who has always had big dreams and he hasn't been afraid to chase his dreams. That journey has taken him, to different shores, as you mentioned, along the way, he figured out that other founders and dreamers are really his tribe.
Varun, you grew up in India wanting to change the country. Then you went to Stanford, you built companies, you worked at a top AI company. And now you are running a bootstrapped compliance software company. When you are successful, then everything gets well, right? And people accept you who you are. They were trying to protect you. This is their way of loving us.
Be comfortable with some people's discomfort around you. Otherwise, I think it is very hard to, really go chase your own dream. I get on a call with a founder at 11 p.m. and it's not even about compliance. It just feels my life's work. The fact that they pay for ComplyJet software and services is just the cherry on top.
Big dreams don't come quietly.
They demand risk.
They demand fire. They demand transformation.
Welcome to The Corporate Life, Billion-Dollar Conversations. Hosted by Hina Siddiqui, CEO and founder of Corporate Influence Media, creator of Capital Stage Credibility Positioning, 4-time Global Award winner, featured across more than 700 global outlets, and heard in 94 countries. Join us as we sit with tech CEOs, multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs, and leading investors, the people building what's next. Here, success isn't a headline. It's a human story. The turning points, reinventions, failures, breakthroughs, and bold decisions that change everything. Because every life is a movie, and you're the star of yours.
Varun, you grew up in India wanting to change the country. Then you went to Stanford, you built companies, you worked at a top AI company. And now you are running a bootstrapped compliance software company and it's profitable. How does that arc make sense?
It's a story of a small boy who has always had big dreams and he hasn't been afraid to chase his dreams. That journey has taken him, to different shores, as you mentioned, to Bay Area, to New York, different countries around the world. And along the way, he figured out that other founders and dreamers are really his tribe, they could be present in India, they could be Indians, they could be, Latin Americans migrating to California to build, AI native companies or, anywhere around Europe and the world. And compliance software company is just a way to play a small part in the journey of all of these builders globally. And that, is that boy's life's work and hence, makes complete sense to him.
Yeah. So what shaped you when you were growing up in Haridwar? Like where did that ambition come from? Because for most of us Indians, that patriotism comes from the cricket field. What was that for you?
I, grew up in a lower middle class background. Most of the people in my family were doing, salaried jobs and stability was, quite important. One thing which, I saw a lot in my family, especially from my grandmother, is there was always a focus on people who were less privileged than us. She would, contribute a lot to, other people, not only, distant relatives, but everyone around. And she was not very educated, but she was seen as, this really kind. She had the wisdom, exactly. And somewhere along the way, I think the young Varun really embraced those values that how can I, also help others? That seems, like a very meaningful thing to do. I would see the satisfaction which was present for my grandmother, and that seemed really authentic and real. And a young man's ego and ambition, expanded upon that why stop at, a few people? I am growing up in a country where there are hundreds of millions of people who have, needs of different kinds which are not fulfilled. So why not, take a swing at that? I would also say that I was very lucky. I got access to many opportunities, both education and professional, which made it super clear that there may not be wisdom in the young boy, but he possesses a lot of skills which are paid really well in the professional market out there. And hence, money is not going to be a problem, which I think really unlocked this desire to, go after the dream in a really big way.
Yeah. It's very interesting you said that because when we grow up in a family which is not very privileged, where we don't see a lot of money around, and where the people who are around us are also not very rich, and then it's very natural also to get that dream, like, to have that uh, desire to have money and to bring all those things that we could not get to the future generations, and in fact do things for our parents. And the challenge is that how do you change that money mindset, that
Mhm.
mindset that for example, coming from a safe background where everybody was in a safe job, and obviously our parents and people around us expect us to do the same, to live the same kind of life. And when somebody in the family tries some entrepreneurship or anything that is uh, not like seen by a lot of people in that family, you feel and you face some resistance, like, some maybe judgment, some warning. So did you experience anything of that?
I have experienced it, like throughout my career.
Okay.
ComplyJet, like which I'm building now, is the third time, like I'm building a company. And
Wow.
every single time, like my aunts and uncles, like have the same refrain that, oh, like this one was, like the promising one of the family. He went to IIT, he went to Stanford, and, like he can't hold a stable, well paying job. They were super happy that, like I was working in this really famous enterprise AI company. They did not know what the company did, but they knew that it paid really well. It was
Right.
headquartered in California, and like some really smart people worked there. And they
Yes.
were so excited that, like Varun has been able to hold on to a job for, like 4 years. Like that is unheard of. And so you're right. I think it is important to see the values, like for what they are. They are, like very important, like they give you a sense of who you
Yeah.
are and where you come from.
They try to
uh,
protect you.
they're trying to protect you, and yet, like it is important to not let that bind you from, like going
Correct.
where you
I love
want to
that.
be.
Yeah.
And it is important to break out of the shell, like it's the story, right? Like there is a story that, like the family tells itself of, like what it is about. And I am trying to create a second story that, like, yes, all of this is true, but like there can be more, like to it. And a lot of people, like would be uncomfortable about that. And I think it is important to, like be comfortable with some people's discomfort around you. Otherwise, I think it is very hard to, like really go chase your own dreams.
I resonate with that part of your story because when we are from a family which is a kind of middle class or lower middle class or even upper middle class, we have certain expectations imposed on us, and especially when, because I was a girl, so it was more likely, like for me, because I had to stay in some limitations, like, you know that you come from there, so you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't go out, you can't stay out of home after this time, that kind of story. And then when you do it, then you face a lot of resistance. But then when you achieve, when you are successful, then everything gets well, right? Then people accept you who you are, because they were trying to protect you, because they did not see that kind of story. They did not see that kind of transformation for women, for example, for me. So obviously this is their way of loving us.
Absolutely. And I think that thanks for, like sharing, like some of the things that you have, like grappled with. I agree that there is a lot, like which lies between the skin and the bone. And, like all of us, like have to go through our, like own internal, like journey. And I think I have seen, like another, like piece. Some of my, like friends and colleagues, like who grew up in business families, I think like there is an incredible amount of learning which happens around the dinner table. You are talking about, like what is it like to try and collect money from, like all of your, like customers, and, like what are some of the things that you're doing in order to, like grow your business. And I think like when you are not growing up around those, like conversations, a lot of the things, like you have to learn when, for example, you are building, like something on your own
Yeah.
and going out there, like and offering something and like feel the vulnerability of that, like I think as a result, I feel like some of it is deeply cultural. Like how many, like people send, like their boys and girls to do a job, and, like Some of it is, like because of safety concerns, but it does hold, like the kids back. And that's a question, like as much for us, like what are we doing today, like to make sure that the next generation, like is not held back.
Exactly. I love when you said that. Like, we have to keep that balance. Like, we need to respect that love, which comes in the form of protection. And also, we don't need to stay in that limitation forever, because otherwise we would not go beyond what we have learned so far. And the other thing, what you said is, when we are not growing up in a business kind of family, we have not learned it at the dinner tables. But then we have a lot more fire than those people, because then we have that fire in our belly that, okay, I'm going to make it. I'm going to prove that to the world that, okay, I can do it. Later on, it becomes something different where, I mean, you are doing it for your own satisfaction and for your own impact. But it starts with like, I would prove that I can do it. Did that happen to you ever?
Yeah, I think to me, there has been, like this deeply held sense of, I received a lot of love as a kid. And I think like that was, in my opinion, really fundamental, because what I got from that, like love, like from not only my parents, but, like a lot of people around me, is that everything is possible and we love you, like for who you are. And I think like that is really important. As a entrepreneur, there are going to be more moments than, like you can count when, like you are going to be rejected. And if you do not have, like belief in yourself, a healthy self-esteem, then the journey is going to be much harder than, like it already is. So I think like there is that part of it that I received, like that in oodles, and, like would doubt a lot about, like what I'm doing and, like how I'm doing it. But, like I wouldn't doubt myself at, like some fundamental level. And I think this whole idea of, like, do you really care about, like what you're doing, is something that, like I have seen for myself. Like it is very easy to, like fall in love with really big ideas, or the idea of, like some big impact that is especially, like possible for folks who have more opportunities than others. Like, and often you realize that, okay, like this impact sounds great on paper, and perhaps I raised a lot of money, like selling that dream, but this is not what I truly enjoy. Perhaps, like I enjoy something, like really different. And when you enjoy something, like it feels like play, it does not feel like work.
Feel
And
like
it
work,
it
right?
you can't, like stop it. Like what seems hard to others comes naturally to you. And I remember, like there was a person, like I met a long time ago. Like he encapsulated it really well. He came from a business family, was working in a top 3 consulting firm in India. And he told me, like a couple of years later, that like everything was a big struggle, Varun. And then I went back and I started a trucking business, and it felt so natural. Like dealing with these truckers day in, day out at like 2 a.m. felt natural to me, versus responding to, like the emails about the feedback on a slide deck. So I think, it, like,
Yeah,
and
you know it in your bones, and everybody is like, the kick for everybody is different. I would say, like, some
Mhm.
things excite some people and the other things excite some people. So it's always a combination of things, and it's not the same for everybody. So when you went to Stanford, what changed for you? And I mean, how did you start seeing the world? Was that a different way of looking at the world after you experienced that?
I definitely think that I became far more ambitious after, like spending a couple of years at Stanford. Like I had grown up in a small city in India, in Haridwar, and then, like went to a really nice place where I met a lot of smart people. And I could feel that, yes, like I belong here, and, like I did reasonably well. Uh, at Stanford, though, like one thing became really clear, that the difference between people who are doing amazing big things versus, like people who don't, is usually about imagination and courage. There is not a lot different between a Vinod Khosla or a Bill Gates versus, like another Harvard or Stanford student. The difference is that like both of these individuals always dreamed really big, and, like would not settle for anything less. There is a price to be paid for that, mind you, right? Like that's the other thing you realize very quickly when you are places like Stanford, that a lot of discontent is possible because nothing that you do seems good enough. And, like everyone is asking you, how are you going to change the world? Therefore, like it puts a lot of pressure on you. But overall, I would say that it was really, like helpful in understanding what role technology can play. I think like that was something that I embraced, like while I was there. I could see that I belong, like with all of these people who are attempting to change the world. I think the question for me was, what is it that I care a lot about? And that was not clear to me, like while I was there. And I was clear that I would continue searching for that answer. And it felt to me that the answer was to be found in India rather than in US. And therefore I decided to move back, like shortly after I graduated. And I think that was super helpful.
Yeah, so you came back to build in payments and e-commerce. What did you learn about building in India versus building in Silicon Valley? Because building in Silicon Valley comes with its own advantages and of course some disadvantages too. And in India, building, because I also come from there, so I know that building in India, it comes with a set of challenges. But then there must be some advantages as well. So what do you say about that?
I think the ecosystem, like in India has matured really nicely over, like the last, 15 years when I, like came back. The main, like thing I observed was there was a lack of trust in Silicon Valley. Like I would see that, like people would help each other out, like very freely. Like there was a sense of, I have been helped by, like hundreds of people and I would love to, like help 5 other people. That, like took some time. Like I was incredibly lucky. I found a lot of people, like who were helpful as well. You could see that, like in the interactions with, like between builders and people who had capital. In Silicon Valley, people, like who had capital respected people with ideas immensely because, like there was this well understood notion that like ultimately the people with, like ideas, they are going to go out and build stuff and, like the custodians of capital will support them on their journey. Whereas the folks in India, like at least 15 years ago, it felt like I'm holding the purse strings and I'm going to dictate a lot about how you're going to go about, like building your thing. I think the other piece, like which was very clear is that this is, like back when the smartphone adoption, like wasn't very high and, like it was starting to take off. Therefore, when I was, like building an e-commerce, for example, I remember I was the lead, like product manager for Myntra, which was one of the e-commerce, like apps for fashion. And we built it and it grew like weed, like we, like shot past all our goals by about 10x, like in a matter of, like a few weeks. We believed that, like about maybe 2 or 3% of, like people who were using our website would come and, like shop on this mobile app. You could only see so much.
Yeah.
The number was like 10x higher. Like people loved it. So I think, and they would tell me stories like, I spend an hour, like on my commute while I'm in a bus. I can, like now go through all of these, like dresses. As soon as the discount is available, I can shop. So I think like a lot,
of course, yeah.
it's amazingly convenient. And like things which, like people started doing in India, like all these technology companies said, you do not trust online shopping, it's fine. We'll send it to you. And then, like if it doesn't fit you, you don't like it, you can return it, no questions asked. So I think a lot of these foundational pieces around access to high quality data, access to data through phone, like anywhere you are, having, like a notion of people who trust you. So you do not feel like any choice is, like very high stakes. I think like those are things which had happened for a much longer time. And consumers in India were, like feeling and seeing that for the very first time. And it brought about a seminal change in, like people's behavior. Like today we look at how people are, like ordering things, like in 10 minutes in India. And they do not even, like think about like shopping for the week. Like it feels like, who does that now? It did not happen overnight. I think like there have been, like a lot of these investments which have happened, which has brought the consumer behavior to, like where it is today. Therefore, it was incredibly exciting to see all of this growth, like, and be part of that during those early years of my career in India.
Right. Because your ambition was to change the country, and perhaps that brought you back to India back. And then, of course, there would be challenges, and challenges are everywhere. I would say that different kind of challenges everywhere. But when you have that desire to change something in your own country, then you can easily take on those challenges.
Yeah, I think having a deep sense of connection with people is incredibly important. And we were talking about how, it can happen, like across different communities, but coming back to a community that you're deeply familiar with, you understand their desires, and how they think about, things is very important. Like, for example, having access to a high quality, fashionable dress in a small part of India,
Like
which did
Haridwar,
not like Haridwar, like, like some other small place.
yeah,
And you are able to, like look at the picture of a friend on Facebook, and then you are able to order exactly the same thing and it would arrive, like in a day. That
yeah,
was
yeah.
magic. And that, like fulfilled, like this deeply held aspiration, which went far beyond convenient fashion. It was about self-esteem. It was how you saw yourself. Like all of these people who used to go to a Bombay, a Delhi, like to shop, or people who were well heeled would go to a Dubai. They like didn't have to go. Like there were brands like Mango and like which were just
Okay.
coming to India, and like they were available, like wherever you are, like you can get it. So people were incredibly surprised that I ended up spending about 5 to 6 years of my life in fashion e-commerce. Like, but I learned a lot, like about people's emotions and motivations and why is it so important for them to look good, like it's a really human, and universal desire. So yeah, I'm grateful for, like the time I spent there.
Exactly. I love that. So now tell us about the ComplyJet story. Like, how did it start? What are you doing there? And how is it going? How do you feel on a day-to-day basis?
As I mentioned in like earlier, like I was working in an enterprise, like company working with very, very large, like customers, banks, and, like insurance companies, which we all know on a first name basis. On the side, though, I was also interacting with a lot of founders, like in India, in Silicon Valley. In a lot of cases, I had invested in them. I had, play the role of an advisor, and I could see that security and compliance, like concerns would come up for all of these, like founders very early in their journey. They found it hard to, be trustworthy for, like their prospects. And on the other side, we were seeing these massive, like companies spend, like 6 months, 12 months, like going through security reviews, for, like our products at Instabase. So it felt that like, hey, this is a really, like important problem. How do you make B2B businesses more trustworthy over internet, like felt such a critical, like problem. And I was seeing how a lot of, like AI models are coming in. They can, like help you understand a lot of data, like which is required to, like process and security reviews for compliance. It felt like a new approach, which is, like very founder friendly and, like can leverage all the new, like technologies which are now available, can help, like build something. And one of my first bosses, like he, like had this maxim that if you think that something is saturated, like the only thing you need is sharp nails. You need to, like continue to
Yeah.
scratch to, like figure out new insights. And I think that that's what we have done at ComplyJet over the last couple of years. We have built an AI native, like experience for small companies. We have built an AI native organization, which has been incredible. Like, I think the work that we are able to do with a small team of 10 to 12 people, it would not have been possible to pull off, like even with 60 or 70 people, like just 2 years ago. So that's been, like incredible. And I think a lot of the choices, like I'm making about who to focus on, like for sales, are we raising capital or not, are informed by just having seen or participated in journeys of hundreds of founders as an investor, as an advisor, as an entrepreneur myself. And that conviction, like is so interesting. Like there are, like times when I get on a call with a founder at 11 p.m. And it's not even about compliance. Like, I am advising them about a round they are raising. I'm advising them about a team they are building. And it just feels my life's work. Like, it's not something that I am telling to myself, like intellectually. Like, I am willing to go to any length to support, like these founders. And it feels like a privilege that I'm able to play a small part in their journey. The fact that they pay for ComplyJet software and services is just the cherry on top. And
That's very nice. So smart as
don't
well.
tell that to my customers, like they should not come back renegotiating, like their contracts with me. Like, that is real, like it does not feel like work. I have, like talked to hundreds of founders over the last 2 years. It does not feel like sales.
I
I
love
show
that
up.
approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like when you're talking about everything else that they have as a problems, and then you're solving their problems, and then if you are not even selling what you are making, still they would buy because they trust you at that point. So this is a beautiful strategy as well. I mean, I'm not saying that it's your strategy, but then it is a nice one. Like it's a nice way to impact people in a brilliant way.
And I actually think that, like we are in the trust business. Like we fundamentally, like have to come across, like as a trustworthy brand. But if you really like zoom out and, like this is where, like I also love your work and what you do with, like a lot of people, that when software building becomes easy, then you really have to own your story and the narrative, because otherwise it is really, really hard, like for people to make any choices. Like I tell this to my team and, like sometimes I get into a lot of trouble with my engineers about this. I tell them, imagine that, like a mom enters Costco and there are, like 20 brands of cereal out there. How are you going to be the cereal box that gets picked up? And, like, I tell them, they're like, we are in that business. Like, we have made the cereal box. Now, it is really important that we get noticed and, like, we are the ones, like, who our buyer, like, pays attention to. And how do we ensure that? I think, like, people talk a lot about tactics and there is a lot of conversation about, like, how is AI changing search and all of that. But I think the crux of the matter is that you have to own your narrative. You have to tell your story really effectively. Otherwise, it is just impossible
It is
to.
impossible. Exactly. This is what we do at corporate influence media. Is like when we talk about the narrative, it's so important. Like, what exactly is it that you are about? It has to be an authentic story, not a build up something like which is built for media. Not for that. It needs to be about what is your authentic story. What is actually coming? Like, for example, your story is you come from Rishikesh, Haridwar, I mean that part of the world, and then you build something in the US, and then you came back with your roots. This is a powerful story. I mean, and this is so authentic and this is so true. So, one lesson that I can draw from whatever you're talking about right now is for the people is that be genuinely interested in people. That is important than just think transactional. Like, that, okay, you reach out to somebody, you want them to buy your product or whatever you're offering. But when you're genuinely interested in people, then you automatically earn their trust. Then definitely they would invest in whatever you are offering.
Absolutely. And I think I would also add that, like, pay a lot of attention to your own energy. Like, see the things that, like provide you more energy. Like some people, and that I think is a great signal for what, like can be, like your life's work. Like the journey is really long and sometimes the rewards do not show up on time or they don't show up at all. And I think it is really important.
At some point in time, they will. It's like karma, we call it, right? I so much believe in that. Like nothing goes in vain, like, nothing is wasted. Everything comes back in its own time, in its own right.
I believe that. Like, I think that that's one of the things that at least I have seen, like happen so many times, that I have received so much kindness and grace, like from people that it feels that there is no other reason, like if you open up to universe and, like you try to be kind, then, like you receive that back, like manifold.
Exactly. So in the world where everybody is raising, why did you choose to stay bootstrapped?
Well, our, like clear thesis was that let's, like see if there is a business to be built here. And then, like we will understand its capital needs. I, like was able to invest some of my own capital, and we were, like very frugal. Like we built a small prototype and went and talked to, like people who were complete strangers. Like I would strongly advise any founder out there, do not ask friends and family for feedback. Like they're just too nice on you. Go, like talk to strangers. Once you do that, like it was clear that, like there was a need, and, like people were willing to pay, and we were able to get to, like the first 10 to 15 customers, like we had enough money in the bank. And the question was, like, what is it that, like we can do with capital? Like, it's like, I'm no longer at that place where, like an article in TechCrunch, like does a lot, like to my self-esteem. And we, like saw that there was a lot of, like conviction in building a content-based GTM engine. There were, like things that we were able to do with a very small team. And we decided to, like max out on optionality, that let's see, like where we go. And we have been growing, like really well over the last, like 3 quarters. Very profitable, like I have to, like keep thinking about how are we investing our cash flow. And it allows you to manage your, like business in a way which is just not possible once you raise, like capital. I think you have to go for the, like fences when you are, like raising preferred capital from venture capitalists. And I think like that's definitely, like a great idea when, like the space that you are, like in allows for, like a massive outcome, and you believe that, like it is possible for you to be, like number 1 or number 2 in that space. And don't get me wrong, we are incredibly ambitious people, like we do want to, like continue building and, like go for, like massive, like outcomes. Right now, we believe that, like our customers' revenue and cash flow is the best way to, like invest in that growth. And the constraints which come with it actually allow for really clear decision making. We do not, like hire people until we can, like when we hire, every hire is very intentional. So we love it, like as Jack Ma, like used to say, like a lot, that people do not die of starvation. They die, like of feeding too much. And in my experience, that has been true.
So yeah, I like that point. And recently I was recording with somebody and we talked about this, that like when you have a lot of money, you can make mistakes. But when you have less, then you can't afford to make more mistakes. Like you cannot afford to make mistakes. So this is basically a blessing in disguise, that you don't have money. So now you need to be really, really strategic. You need to be really, really smart with whatever you have, with your resources. But if you have money, then you might use it in a way which might elongate that journey of getting to your next milestone.
I think you raise an important point, and this is actually one area that I've heard a lot from bootstrapped founders, that sometimes they, like stay too defensive. Like I, like having been on both sides of the table, like believe that, like that can be helpful. For example, 2 quarters ago, like I could see the momentum, like in our pipeline, and it was very clear that, like things are, like picking up pace. We, like hired, like couple of sellers, like we started, like hiring for customer success roles, because I knew that in order to ramp them up, like I would need at least a quarter. And by then, like I expected, like our pipeline to be much bigger. And that has happened. And now, like we are at a place where we are investing a lot more in our marketing, like because a lot of, like the sales, like motion is working. I think it is important to have the ability to modulate, just like, like really wise and educated individual, like should have the grace to talk to a king and a beggar, like both.
Yeah.
I think in a business also you need, like to understand, like what's your context, when is the time to, like put a lot of your chips on the table, when do you need to, like play safe, and like what's the margin of safety that you are, like comfortable with. And whenever we trap ourselves into just one way of operating and thinking, I think like it is a suboptimal outcome, whether you are just chasing growth for the sake of it, or just like letting like money pile up in the bank account, like either of them like don't seem ideal to me.
So your family must be now proud of you for going into the entrepreneurship.
It's very interesting. Like a lot of my aunts and uncles, like who are incredibly, like disappointed earlier, they are, like they see that like we are doing well at ComplyJet. They are proud of like that, and they, in case of my like parents, especially my mom, she mostly cares about like how happy I am. She doesn't need to like ask me how ComplyJet is doing. She just sees me and spends like 5 minutes talking to me to understand that like in a very visceral way. So she has been really happy, like, because she sees that I have so much energy. I'm doing, like more work than I have done in years. And, like I have the energy to keep going. And she also like knows that it's very important to me to create high quality, like opportunities for folks, like in India and around the world. And we have been able to do that, like as we are expanding the ComplyJet team. So she takes a lot of pride in that we are able to, like have that sort of an impact. And she knows how meaningful it is to me.
Yeah, I love that.
Get ready for the ultimate challenge, this or that. Choose fast, trust your instincts, and let's go.
Varun, now let's play a game. I love to play this game with every guest on the show, and it's called This or That. I'll give you two options. You just need to pick one instinctively. So are you ready?
Sure. I'm on it.
India or Silicon Valley? Where does your soul build?
India.
Stanford or the street? Which taught you more?
The street.
Raise VC or stay bootstrapped?
Stay bootstrapped.
Build something unique or build something useful?
Build something useful.
Payments, e-commerce or compliance? Which one was really you?
Payments.
Change India or change the world?
Change the world.
The founder who fits in or the one who never did?
The one who never did.
Oh, same. I resonate with that so much. Profitable and small or funded and fast?
Profitable and small.
Product person or business person? Which one are you really?
Business person.
Haridwar or Stanford? Which one shaped you more?
Haridwar.
Well played. I love that. It was quick, pretty quick. Thank you. Varun, we believe that every life is a movie and you are the star of yours. So if your life is a movie, which it definitely is, like a Bollywood blockbuster, what is the title of that movie?
The title of, like this movie is, this movie is about a boy, like in search of, like his dreams and going after that. So I would say, like Boy in Love with the World. Like that's, like the name of the movie. Yeah.
Amazing. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Like, what are you doing?
I see myself, like scaling up, like ComplyJet, like hopefully reach, like and touch, like the lives of like thousands of, like founders globally. Like we have made a strong start, like at that. I see myself, like doing, like a few Olympic triathlons. Like I don't know swimming right now, but I'm very passionate about, like running and, like, so that's something that new that, like I'm trying. And I would love to continue exploring new spaces. Like I have already lived in 5 countries, like so far. And even though, like my heart, like belongs in India, like, I love, like living in different places and experiencing them. So I'm pretty certain that I would be living in a, like different place and experiencing that with my family.
Amazing. So for those of people who would like to follow the rest of your movie, how can they do that?
You can, like visit us at ComplyJet.com to know more about, like us. You can, like visit my, like social on LinkedIn, and we would, like share that, like information with this podcast episode. Those are the best places to follow, like our work and what we are doing.
Thank you, Varun. It was a fun conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Loved it.
Thank you so much for having me, Hina. I really enjoyed it too.
This is The Corporate Life. More stories, more insight, more truth. Until the next episode, stay curious. Don't forget to subscribe.